From where we last left off, workers at Harland and Wolff built the keel of the RMS Titanic, and for nearly 2 years, the ship is finally complete. But however, the fitting out process would be next for the ship, so basically they had to launch the ship from the slipway and out into the River Lagan. It is now April 2nd, 1912, 112 years ago today, that the RMS Titanic underwent her first sea trials.
So, what are sea trials? Well, sea trials are basically a series of tests that a ship must undergo to prove that the ship is very seaworthy whatsoever. So, a representative from the Board of Trade actually boarded the Titanic to provide a series of tests such as acceleration, maneuverability, and a full-on crash stop. So, think of it as a restaurant undergoing its first health inspection before opening up to the public, because you got to make sure that this place is safe for others to eat, to socialize, to drink. Because if they find one thing wrong in there, you basically have to go and do it all over again. So what were the tests?
At first, they conducted the Titanic to go through its paces with the speed, such as going from stop to standby to dead slow, slow, half speed, and all ahead full. And then a crash stop, to which it was 850 yards, which actually proves that Titanic can stop quickly very safely. A crash stop is basically going from near top speed to full astern in case the ship were to encounter something in its way. And maneuverability with the steering, if they had to turn the ship hard to starboard or port, and it took 3,850 yards for the Titanic to do a full, complete lap, which was pretty acceptable. After the test, a safety certificate is signed off by the British Board of Trade and handed off to the RMS Titanic, and the ship is free to go to Southampton from Belfast, as sea trials were done in 6 hours. And also, one more thing, the safety certificate is up to a full year.
And during the timing around that time frame, the sea trials in the days away from the main voyage, it actually had to be done right away. And basically doing it within 6 hours, they actually did a very good, reasonable job so far, even though considering what they had to go through, what the timing was, and everything. So they basically had to get it done. It is now April 3rd, 1912. 112 years ago today, the Titanic arrived at Southampton for its maiden voyage. Final preparations were made for the Titanic to be supplied with cargo, food, drinks, coals, and other supplies that need to keep the passengers happy. So, in a week's time, and I did actually look this up on Google, and basically, the Titanic was actually supplied with, and I've actually brought it up on my computer right now, and I'd love to show you the list, but I'm going to tell you right away. So we have 75,000 pounds of meat, yum, 7,500 pounds of ham and bacon, 25,000 pounds of poultry, 11,000 pounds of fresh fish, 4,000 pounds of salted and dried fish. We got 36,000 apples and oranges, which actually does make a total of 72,000 apples and oranges. We have 40 tons of potatoes, 800 asparagus bundles, 2,500 pounds of grape peas, 7,000 heads of lettuce, 10,000 pounds of dried beans and rice, 250 barrels of flour, 1,000 loaves of bread. Oh, Charles Yelkin got a lot of work to do anyway. 800 pounds of tea, 40,000 fresh eggs, 1,500 gallons of fresh milk, and there's also 600 gallons of condensed milk. And, of course, 15,000 bottles of ale. I wonder what happened to the rest during the sinking. Well, we'll get to there. And it was also 850 bottles of liquor. And of course, there's actually 14,000 gallons of drinking water used every 24 hours. And that list is just very mind-blowing indeed. So compare that list and compare it to a modernized cruise ship and actually do comparing, to see what changed over the years. So another item that the Titanic would need is fuel for its hull. Stokers would actually shovel coal into the massive boilers and into the fire so the boilers can turn that coal in to turn and create steam whatsoever. And that steam would actually go into the reciprocating engines or the turbine engines that power the propellers to turn. So the Titanic is actually a steam-powered ocean liner, and it needs a lot of coal. And under a full load, it can carry 6,611 tons of coal, and it was stored in the ship's coal bunkers. But the question is, why? Well, you have to keep this in mind, though. One of them is the distance. Southampton to New York is about 3,000 miles away whatsoever. Titanic can actually travel on 1 mile for every ton of coal that has been burned. So it could carry for one trip to Southampton, New York, and vice versa. But getting that coal is actually going to be very, very difficult for the White Star Line because the United Kingdom is now experiencing a coal strike around this time frame whatsoever. The strike was actually resolved on the 6th of April while Titanic was in Southampton, but due to the strike whatsoever, there was a massive shortage of coal that's available. But the White Star Line does not want to allow Titanic to miss its main voyage just on account of a coal strike. But what they actually did was they actually made some deals from dock vessels to give that coal to the Titanic whatsoever. But due to the fact that the White Star Line is doing this, some of those passengers were actually transferred from other ships to the Titanic. And how they cut that close is so beyond me whatsoever. Like, it's just really amazing how they did it. A part of that is basically the reshuffle of the bridge officers. And this is also another added delay as well. And just because, and I just finished up those notes and I decided to look back, see if there's anything I missed. I almost missed this little piece of information right here. An officer by the name of David Blair was actually cut from the Titanic because of the addition of Henry Wilde. Now, Henry Wilde was actually supposed to be originally on the RMS Olympic. But however, he was told by the White Star Line to stay in Southampton. Little he knew he would be on the RMS Titanic.
The original list for Titanic's bridge officers included from Chief on down, William McMaster Murdoch, Charles Lightoller, David Blair, as I previously mentioned, Herbert Pittman, Joseph Boxhall, Harold Lowe, and James Moody.
So, unfortunately, a reshuffle of officers and the addition of Henry Wilde actually did cause a reshuffle of the chief, first, and second officers, respectively. So, therefore, the original list, like I mentioned, was Murdoch, Lightoller, Blair, or chief officer, first, and second officers, respectively. However, Captain Smith brought on Henry Wilde, to whom he and Murdoch had sailed on the RMS Olympic with Captain Smith before in the past whatsoever. So as his chief officer, this actually caused the first two officers, Murdoch and Lightoller, to be bumped down to the first and second officers respectively. However, this would actually cut David Blair completely from the roster. And when David Blair did left the Titanic, he actually took along with him the keys for the locker for the binoculars.
The next time we return is on April 10th of 2024. 112 years ago on that day, Titanic would set sail from Southampton, England for her maiden voyage to New York.